Hey, so here's a little way to use AI to boost your productivity. It worked really great for me, and this is a way that I don't really see talked about that much. So, what I've seen usually when people say that AI is going to boost their productivity so much or has boosted their productivity so much has been pretty much just them letting AI do things for them. But what I'm suggesting here is actually that you do the thing yourself, but you let AI guide you, which is almost the opposite of what people usually recommend. So here's what I'm doing. And this is not the only way I use AI, but this is a really cool way. And before I start this, I just want to mention that this sounds very stupid, okay? And if you disagree with this approach, there is a decent chance that you're missing the genius within that stupidity. Because there are actually good reasons. So you're gonna think I am very stupid when I say this, but just stay open for a moment and you'll realize that this is like a midwit meme. And I am on the right side of it. Okay. The method is very simple. I get GPTs such as Alex Hormozi GPT or I don't want to name the others, but yeah, Alex Hormozi GPT, James Clear GPT, Charlie Munger GPT. Actually, Charlie Munger not that much, but anyways, I take some of those kind of GPTs and I describe a domain-specific situation to them. So, for example, when I started doing outreach initially to get some playtesters for my game, I absolutely sucked at that. And so I got Alex Hormozi GPT and I described my situation. I was like, hey, this is what I plan to do. What do you think? And of course, AI can't think. I am well aware of that. But these GPTs have been fed with very relevant information. And so, in general, you can assume that what you're getting, if you're using the right GPT for the right task, is going to be decent. Okay? So, I take what this GPT tells me. So I first find the appropriate GPT. I explain my situation to that GPT, my domain-specific situation. Doesn't need to know everything. That would be a waste of time to type that out. Then the GPT usually gives me some suggestion, and then when I disagree with that suggestion or I have some limiting beliefs, and by limiting beliefs I am not talking about some crippling self-doubt, I am really just talking about a belief that makes it so that I don't want to act on that. Because I believe that something about this approach is not ideal. Right? And then, so whenever this happens, I just push back and I go like, hey, I have this belief. Am I wrong? Should I not apply this here? And this is where you still need to think very critically in this case. So, what I'm not suggesting is just blindly taking everything that it tells you. But what I am suggesting is that you take what it tells you and you think about it. In a sense, while it can't think, it is almost like a book that can talk back. So you're also just taking information that someone else has written down, which that is basically what the AI gives you. But it can say something back when you have an objection. And this is where your critical thinking comes in, because then you can, say, okay, does that make no fucking sense? Does it make sense? And then, this is also very important, I just follow the final instructions, the instructions to which I have no hard objections. Maybe it feels wrong, but but I can't logically say, okay, this is wrong, or this sounds very stupid. So this is when I am at the point where I'm like, okay, you might be right. And then I follow the instructions almost blindly. Okay, this may sound a bit stupid, as said before, but it actually makes perfect sense. Let me explain why this is really good. So, first of all, why would it not be good? And there are multiple reasons. The first one being that you're outsourcing critical thinking to something that can't even think. I've already addressed that. Okay, you're not outsourcing the critical thinking, you are pushing back. However, I want to make it clear you're not really asking of critical thinking. Okay, the way that you should see those GPTs isn't some really smart person who can help you. It is almost like you're asking a kind of overpowered librarian, hey, in all of those books that you have here, is there something that explains to me how to do this, or that would be applicable to this specific situation? That is what it's good at, and that is completely broken. Now, there is another possible objection that people might have, which is that, how do I put this? It is still fallible, right? So the advice that you give, even when it doesn't sound stupid, it could just be stupid anyways. And so usually you only hear this in an AI context. You don't really usually hear this with books, but the same is true for books. The same is true for everything. The same is true when you ask someone who's really experienced. This just doesn't make sense. But the real important thing here that you need to keep in mind is that it doesn't have to be perfect, okay? It just has to be better than what you would do without external advice, or without, the external advice that you're just not going to get. And so, almost blindly following a book, which that is basically what you're doing when you're listening to a custom GPT, you're basically following a book with some extra steps. Even that is better than what you would otherwise do if you don't know what you're doing. And I think it's important to be able to admit that, yeah, sometimes I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Another reason against this would be that you're not learning from your own mistakes. And here's the deal. You're not executing what you yourself think is necessarily the best thing. You do talk it out, and a lot of the time you will believe that what you're doing probably actually is the best thing. But you'll already be convinced that it's a little bit different from what you thought originally, and that is already good. But then also, whether you are doing what you originally thought was best, or whether you are, let's say, following what the AI told you, and you don't know if this is good, you have no idea. You don't have any specific objection, just like, I don't know, I have this limiting belief, and the AI told me like this is not a problem, I don't know. Well, if you do it then anyways, well, guess what? You're still gonna learn. If you're making a mistake, you may not be making the mistake that you authentically would have made, but you still get the opportunity to make a mistake. Or, which is even better, you get the opportunity to do it right, or at least more right, immediately. And then you can learn from the success. Right? So, let me give you an example. when I was starting to do outreach to get some playtesters, I didn't do that for long. I just wanted a few playtesters to have some additional opinions. But when I first wanted to do that, my plan was to go on a Discord server and DM people, go like, hey, sorry to bother you. If you don't want me to DM you, I'll fuck off. But I have this game that you may want to enjoy, that you may want to try, that you may enjoy. And I thought that was good because I thought people don't like getting DM'd. Now, I then changed that because of the GPT to being way more confident. Not being more confident, sounding more confident, quite frankly. And just going like, hey, I'm here. Hey, or hey, you're on the server. I've got some great news for you. Here's a game you might like. And that is not the action I would have originally taken. Okay, so you may say, well, I'm not learning from my mistake, I'm just copying what someone else does. But the thing is, if you copy what someone else does and it works for you, you are indeed learning, right? You are performing a behavior and you're getting reinforced or punished. You're learning. Obviously, there are situations when you wouldn't want to do it like this. For example, I think for uni projects, when I could rant about this for hours, but like when you're doing something at uni or school, and your teacher tells you that your thing would be better if you did this thing differently, and they tell you specifically how to do it, and you do it, and you don't personally find it better, but they find it better. And let's say even most people will find it better, and let's say that there is an objective measure, okay, cool. But I haven't really learned anything because I didn't have to figure that out, right? So the only thing I really learned is in that specific situation, the color red would make more sense, for example. I have some examples from visual design class. I mean, technically it's called visual communication, where I thought that was really stupid. But here's the thing: when you're doing something that is widely applicable, and there you do this, and you just follow someone else's advice, that is really good. Like, if you blindly follow the advice that you need to be confident, or at least appear confident when you are pitching something, even if you're just pitching like, hey, do you want to try this thing for free? As opposed to being like, hey, I'm sorry to bother you, really, really, really cautious. You're not learning too much meta, okay? But you're not learning, in this specific situation, this text would be better. You are still learning something deeper, which is that, yeah, you should be more confident in those situations. And so I still believe that you're learning very adequately. Okay, now why? Okay, so I addressed probably the biggest concerns. Now, why is this actually good? There are multiple reasons. So first of all, it's fucking fast, okay? If you want to read a book about something, that takes time. Now, I'm personally a bit of a slow reader. I like to take a lot of notes. Sometimes I get a little bit distracted and I have to reread a paragraph. It happens, okay? So I can't tell you how long I typically take for. I mean, honestly, like they have different amount. They have different lengths. Like also like even if you just look at the same, even if you just look at books with the same page count, like the fonts are different, the size. Anyway, so let's just say I'm a slow reader. For me, it takes a long time to finish a book. Now, even if you're a fast reader, it still takes some time. And if you want to read it in a way in which you retain the relevant information and knowledge, you too will become a slow reader, okay? And that's the point of the book, is just to hammer down one lesson. You are not going to retain it by just, okay, read that sentence, read that sentence, read that sentence. and you keep going like that. It's not gonna really work. With this though, it's really fast, right? You don't have to, invest a lot of time. You just get the advice really, really, really quickly. Like, oh, I need to know how to do this right now. I am 2 minutes away from knowing how to do it. This is if I give some pushback. Then, on the other hand, sorry, not the other hand, but even more on that side, I would argue, and I'm not saying this is always the case, but I would argue that this can actually be a lot better for learning than even reading books. Because you are asking in a very specific moment, right? So, for example, you may be asking when you're just genuinely curious about that one specific question. And you learn better and you retain knowledge better when you get information in a moment when you are curious. So, when I just tell you a fact, the likelihood of you remembering it is not that great. If you say like, oh, I wonder what this is, and then I give you the fact, then you're more likely to retain that information. Also, and this is even bigger, you will likely ask in a moment in which, how do I put this, in which you're about to actually apply what you are about to learn. So, if I read something about how to structure an email better in a book, then if I want to learn that, okay, I have to take a note, and then I probably have to review that note, and recall it, and be like, okay, okay, so what are the three things that I need to do? If I'm doing it right before I'm sending an email, and that's why I'm doing it, I am more likely to learn it because I'm immediately applying it. Because if you read on a book, you have to ingest information initially, then you have to make sure that you retain the information, and then you have to practically apply the information and practice that so it becomes a habit. So if we're talking about something with social skills, for example, you would read it, then you would memorize it, and then you would start using it in conversations or whatever, right? But if you're about to enter a conversation where you want to have a certain effect, and then you ask, I don't know, Dale Carnegie GPT. I'm not the biggest fan of how to influence and influence people, by the way, but let's say you were to do that for some reason. I mean, there's plenty of reason, but let's say you were to do that, in that specific instance, you would probably, how do I say this? You would probably apply that right away, and so you would learn much, much better than if you just read it in the book. But there's also another reason for why I think this is great. But actually, no, before I get into that, this reason is really good, so stick around. I'm using retention strategies. This channel, a little side note if anyone watched this far, this channel isn't meant for anyone to really watch my videos. This is more of like when I'm like 80, I'm gonna look back. But yeah, anyway, so doing this versus reading books, using custom GPTs versus reading books. I think that if you wanna get reasonably good at just doing something, I think it is better to actually just not read books and instead just ask the appropriate GPT how to do it, and then just go ahead and do it with the procedure that I told you, with you also giving objections, etc. I think when you want to deeply understand something, you should use a combo approach. So I still think you should incorporate the GPT approach, but I also think it would make a lot of sense to read a book. So, but this would not be something like, oh, I need to do this thing right now, so let me just read a book. That would be more like, wouldn't it be great to have a deep understanding of this part of psychology. And this is not about how you practically apply something. This is very foundational. And then when it comes to how do I, okay, let's take a specific example. Let's say you wanna understand reciprocation tendency, as Charlie Munger would call it. So in that specific instance, if you want to really deeply understand that and use it, you would first read about it. I think Influence by Cialdini would probably be a good start. Robert Cialdini. And then, after reading, or maybe, while reading, who knows, you would look at where you want to apply this. And then you would ask the appropriate GPT how you would apply it in the specific situation. That is generally how you build skills and understanding. And very, very good skills tend to benefit greatly from a deep understanding. However, if you just want to be decently good at something, which you probably should just be decently good at a lot of things, then the GPT approach is probably perfectly fine. Because with the GPT approach, not only do you get the most important knowledge from a book, you're also getting experience right away and you're applying it right away. Okay, now let me get to the last reason. I probably forgot some reasons, but here's another reason why this approach with GPT is so good. Humans tend to have an easier time to do something when they are told by an authority figure. This even applies to me, and I am possibly the least, I don't know how to say it, I am probably like the person I know that is the least susceptible to just following an authority figure. Ask any of my teachers, ask my parents. But nevertheless, it still works on me. It's definitely gonna work on you. I assure you that. The great thing is, I already talked about this, but what it tells you doesn't have to be perfect, okay? But as long as it's better than what you would do with all of your limiting beliefs and your tendency to procrastinate sometimes, and this, and this, and this, and your fear. I forgot how I started the sentence, but let me just restart the sentence. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be better, or it just has to get you to act better than you would with your fears and your limiting beliefs and your doubts. Okay? So not only does this make you do smarter things a lot of the time, it also makes you just fucking do them. Okay? It helps you just do it. When you ask the appropriate GPT, hey, should I spend my time on this or that? I usually like to ask Alex Hormozi GPT this kind of stuff a lot of the time. It gets much easier to do it, and not because the quality of the information is better, but because I just don't have to think about it too much, and I think that's very valuable. The same thing. Sorry, this is especially useful when it comes to this is useful for multiple things. So first of all, when it comes to executing something a certain way. So, okay, I should send messages in a way that sounds very confident and not in a way that sounds very timid. I don't know. Well, my authority figure just told me I'm just gonna fucking do it, right? That's easier. But then also when it comes to just being undisciplined, I think this can also really help. Because that bitch voice in you probably won't be able to convince the appropriate GPT that the thing that you don't want to do is something that you shouldn't do, right? Or that the thing that you should not do is something that you should do. So I think a good thing is I sometimes like to ask when I'm about to do something that I know probably isn't the smartest. No, when I already know that I shouldn't do it. No, let me say it differently. A lot of people, when they feel like doing something but they know it's a stupid idea, they look for justification to do it. They ask their loser friends, hey, do you think it's okay to take some time off and whatever. I like to do the opposite, and I think that those GPTs are actually amazing for that. So what I like to do is I like to ask, for example, Alex Hormozi GPT or any comparable GPT, hey, do you think it would be reasonable to do stupid thing X? Like, hey, do you think it would make sense? Hey, sorry. Hey, I'm about to program. Do you think it would make sense to listen to some podcasts while doing that? And the obvious answer is fuck no. And it's pretty fucking hard for me to still do it when I get that. Okay? So yeah, you are leveraging this human tendency to listen to authority figures, which is really cool because in the end of the day, you set the goal for this authority figure, right? You tell this not really even existent authority figure what to guide you towards. So it doesn't actually come with all of the baggage. Yeah. And so this is it. This is how I use AI in order to significantly boost my productivity. In short, I let it essentially just give me the information that I want out of a book, the information that is applicable to my situation, that is, when it is applicable to the situation, which means that I don't have to read an entire chapter of a book or skim an entire book, but I still get quality information and I can apply it immediately, and it also helps me just get shit done because people operate much better when they have some kind of authority figure telling them what to do. Even I. Take care.